Hey Brian, hey Boone.
Hey, Anu. Hey, Boo.
Um,
So Brian, one question for you. Sorry, excuse me. Um, I know that Morgan had you guys have had a few meetings, I think, before the end of the year. Is
Yeah, I went over to the Flexi call.
Okay.
Just one of, I think, before the end of the year. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't had any. We didn't have the first one. He canceled today's because he's just writing the spec, and then we're gonna meet next week, I think.
Okay.
So I wanted to get an understanding. I missed that call. I was on vacation already. Do we have an understanding of what it involves, and is it are we in
So,
agreement or?
um, no, I think so. His proposal was to use his proposal was to synchronize the bow flexi and the sideband protocol. I think
Yeah,
my
that's
argument was
uh-huh.
that they're kind of for two different purposes, and so I'm not. I don't know if there's anything to gain necessarily in synchronizing the two of them. I think um, I think more importantly it would be figuring out a way to use or find something closer to what we have for the the um, the link layer protocol on
Mhm.
Bow Flexi rather than trying to use the sideband. Because the sideband we have is really for
Just the control
uh,
path.
yeah, it's just the control path. It's meant to be as simple as possible, so there's as little friction as possible for people to implement it.
Right,
Because I guess the general idea of sideband is you use it and then and then once that link is up, you use the main band for everything. You
right,
just
right. Yeah, you don't. Yeah, it's only for initialization, and then once you've configured, you don't really use it anymore. It's sort of a
Yeah. So
wasted
spending
thing, I
any
guess.
extra gates on it, spending any extra time, spending any extra efficiency on it doesn't make a lot of sense in my mind. So right
Okay.
now it's architected just to be as simple as possible. Um,
Yeah. Okay. I see
but
what you're saying. It's just that I think from the BoFi side, the Flexi is also meant to be as simple, no frills for non-AI type applications, right? So we're targeting much lower data rates, and you've heard Morgan's spiel on it.
right. But efficiency is an issue, right? And so he has a lot of there's multiple different packet sizes, different framing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so it is not it's more complicated from a logic perspective, right? Um, I I mean, if one, I guess I don't have a real big horse in the fight.
Hmm.
I guess this the argument here is that, um, using the Balflexi protocol for our sideband, um, it just complicates um,
Existing spec as is.
yeah, it complicates not only the spec but any implementation that might be using it, right? Because it's not like I said, it is a more
Mhm.
complicated protocol.
Okay. So your suggestion would be to do what the main board does, which is simplify the link layer piece, but leave the sideband just again for configuration.
Right. My advice would be to leave it as it is, and
Uh-huh.
then if and then my suggestion to the Bow Flexi group, instead of doing their own protocol, maybe work with us on the main band side and see if there's a way to simplify that and hack it over
Okay.
the Bow
Yeah, no, I
Flexi.
think that
But we didn't really get that far, I don't think, in
into
the
the details. Yeah,
conversation.
yeah. It was just a preliminary, and I think once he's got something written up, it'll be easier to, because a lot of this is hand waving now.
Yeah, yeah,
It'll be nicer to read something and then try to make sense of it. So he thinks by next week he'll have some version of it. So there was no point meeting today. So yeah, I hope something comes of it because it's. I think the flexi can be a really useful piece for a lot of folks who are uh, just like Morgan is in the MCU space, and not necessarily more edge AI, much less. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I get the focus, and I completely agree with their mission statement. I think we just have different mission statements from the sideband side.
Okay. Oh, so Matt is here. Hey, Matt, I was just asking Brian how the conversations with Morgan went. I think they had one meeting before the holidays, which neither of us went to.
Okay.
Yeah, because we were already, passed out on the couch. We were done for the year.
Yeah.
um, but I think Brian's take on sideband, using a sideband for flexi purposes, um, is slightly different. I think he discourages that and wants to leave the sideband as is, right? Just paraphrasing what you said, Brian.
Yeah, yeah. I think again, at the end of the day, though, if somebody wanted to use the sideband, sorry, wanted to synchronize them in their implementation, I don't think it really it doesn't impede the ability to control the FIs or anything like that. Again, my whole argument is that the reason that the sideband is the way it is to um, make the friction as less as small as possible for people that are implementing the main band. I don't think that there is we have different goals, I think, than the sideband does in terms. I'm sorry, than the about flexi does than for efficiency versus complexity of the implementation.
Yeah, I think we were looking at it maybe the other way, using the flexi as the sideband so that you could have minimize the amount of wires so that if you wanted to do like an application that had both flexi and main spec, you wouldn't need to also add another set of wires for sideband.
Okay, I don't think that was communicated. I don't think our spec precludes that, by the way. So just to be clear, the link layer spec 1.2, the way it is right now, is broken up into three sections, basically. There's more than three chapters, but it's basically three groupings of sections. So one is all the main band stuff. One is the sideband protocol that runs over bow sideband specifically, and one is one is the link control protocol. And so if you have, and the entire idea was that if you had some other physical means of communicating the sideband that's not the bow sideband protocol, then you could use the link control protocol for managing the main band PHYs. So if you don't have bow sideband and you just have bow flexi instead, that only thing that changes is that one layer in the cake. It doesn't preclude you from doing link control.
Right, and that layer could actually just be integrated into the flexi spec. Is the new, I guess, in the spec that's currently on GitHub, there isn't a lot of description and
Yeah,
detail on the link control side of things.
we
As
stopped using
far as
GitHub a long time ago. We've been using
okay,
the Google Drive only. I can put a link here though. I don't know if Helia needs to give you access or anything, but I think
Yeah,
it's open.
probably. Matt, I thought I had shared the Google Drive link with you, but
I
then again,
I
I don't
think you did,
remember.
but I wasn't able to access it.
Yeah, you probably need permission, and maybe it's Helia who needs to.
Yeah, I don't think I have access to give people permission. So here's the work in progress folder I just showed in the
Let's see if it
chat.
works. Oh, it actually works.
Yeah, I got to it too.
So there is a let me move some things around. Okay. All right. So there's a thing called TLL one version 1.2. That is the current rev that we're using right now. And that has the sideband protocol and link control protocol in it.
Does it have any PHY information for those? Because that I remember was missing from the 2.0 spec for the PHY,
So
but
well, depends on what do you mean by PHY information?
does it use the same signaling and requirements as the main 16 channels? Is it still 0.75 volts? Is it still
So yeah,
that wasn't super
we don't
clear?
have any physical layer information from that perspective on there. When we talk about the PHYs, We just talk about bit mapping to the
Okay.
slices and things like that. So for the sideband side of it, again, we're assuming bow sideband. We do have signaling in there from bow sideband because there's not, I guess the bow spec for the sideband side doesn't talk about like the definitions of the signals, it just names them. So we
Right.
we give like a waveform for the sideband, say, all right, this is how you use the frame signal. Here's some of the timing information. But other than that, we don't talk about like electricals or anything like that.
Okay. Is there a need to define the electrical so that we actually kind of is define it as well as it's done in the main data lines and clock lines?
I don't think so. I think I mean, whatever. I can't remember what's in the bow 5 spec, but nobody's ever complained about that side to me. And I'm probably the right person to tell you if there's an issue on that from that
Yeah.
perspective.
I think the idea is what I'm thinking about at least is okay, we give two specs, or we give the same spec set, the phi, the link layer, transaction layer, to two different completely independent groups that don't even talk to each other. And in the end, once they both implement it on a chiplet, they can hook up to each other and communicate with no problems.
Yeah. So
That would be ideal, right?
so right now in the link layer, in the PAL spec, and pretty much all the specs we have lots and lots of options. And so, from the link layer side, we've tried to solve this with an additional set of specs we call profiles, basically. And they say, all right, here's the specs I'm relying on. Here are all of the multitudes of options that I picked in those different specs, so that when you read this profile document, then you know exactly what you need to do on your side. And so I've said before, I've talked to the systems team and stuff like that. At some point, we need like even higher level profile that talks about bus the exact signaling and things like that, that are even above like transaction layer and more system holistic and things like that. So I think at some point we do need that, but I think the specs we've been providing are to enable someone to do that rather than be any kind of plug and play or dictatorial um, ways of being able to do that. I think
Okay.
the way we typically talk about it is we're defining a language rather than a
Yeah,
rather than
it's
a spec.
evolving, right? So, yeah, maybe there will be a holistic kind of black box approach to it at some point, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's
So
evolving still.
there's all these other competing things we have right now that'll eventually slot in that we're trying to figure out, like FCSA and OCA and things like that. And so I think those things are trying to define the even higher levels of the stack. But at the same time, they make some demands of the lower levels, right? Like
Right,
FCSA
right.
saying okay, well, FCSA has its own transaction layer and stuff like that, and then defines UCIe and stuff like that. But I think in the long term, it'll probably be somewhere in the middle. And the hope there is that, those specs, or maybe not those specific specs, but related specs would utilize these, um, file flexi or a transaction layer or whatever the case may be to make something that says, okay, this is what you do to plug together exactly. But it instead of it's listed as like you see in FCSA or whatever, where it's a bullet point rather than an entire document.
And then adding to it is Tenstorrent's um,
Yeah,
version of it too, right? So yeah,
yeah.
there's
OCA is similar, though there are some, um, the Venn diagram seems to be a little bit different.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of like scanning through the sideband stuff and the link control stuff, and there's not anything potentially wrong with carrying this over the Fi or the Flexi Fi. That may be the way to go in the future, perhaps.
Yeah, again, if you're going to use Flexi for other things in addition, then swapping out that sideband control protocol for a Flexi control protocol, like I said, as long as you're supporting memory mapping and stuff like that, doesn't
Yeah.
affect the link control protocol. So I think right now mixing and matching potential specs and implementations here is still viable.
Okay. Well, thank you for all the information and the link.
Yeah, no problem. And I'll my time these days has been very complicated with all the travel in the first part of the year. So I hope to get over to the Flexi call again sometime soon.
Yeah, I think Matt, I don't know if Morgan said next Wednesday or Thursday he was going to share his write up. So we'll try to find out, Brian, so you can call into the right call as opposed to the one where
Yeah,
we actually do
he said
nothing.
he'd have it for the call on the 22nd in the afternoon.
Okay, so that's the Thursday afternoon call,
Yeah.
Brian.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I'm not sure if I'll make it or not. I'll
Okay,
have to
no
check
worries.
my calendar. I'll
Yeah.
actually be in China that whole week.
Oh dear.
Um,
Okay, the time will probably not work that well for you then.
yeah, I don't know what that translates to. It's probably really early morning.
Yeah, it'd be
Yeah,
very early in the morning.
you might be jet lagged on the other hand, Matt. Yeah,
We'll
right?
see. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'll make no commitment either way.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
understand. No problem. It's recorded anyway, so we can share that recording with you if when you can't sleep you want to listen to that or something.
Excellent. Anu, just also while you're here, I won't be on the call tomorrow either because I'll be on a plane. I'm going to try and get to put together a slide. I don't know if
Yeah.
Helia can present or not, but I'll put together a
Yeah,
couple of
no,
bullets.
no worry, Brian. Even an email with 5 bullet points, which I can dump on a slide, is good enough. I know it's really late notice, but the problem I'm having is for the triplet summit. Uh, I'm trying to put together on one of the talks at the keynote
Yeah.
a summary of key activities because I think there's a lot of important activities which people need to recognize, and so I don't want to miss anything, which is why I'm asking the workstream leads for just a couple of bullet points. If you don't have time to put on a slide, if a blank slide too is great, Brian, I don't really care. Yeah, it
Okay.
doesn't matter.
No.
We're not beautifying anything here, so
Okay. Yeah. No. I'll get you a couple bullet points one way or another.
excellent.
Um,
Thank you so much. Have a good trip.
no, thank you. And speaking of for this call too, I'm not sure if I'll be able to join. I'll send out some sort of notice the week of just whether I can actually join the call for this one or not.
Is
The
Helia
weekend.
unable to join these on a regular basis, or should we be? I'm just trying to see, should we look for someone else to help you given your travel, or is it you and Helia working okay? Just so happens she's not
She
here too.
hasn't been on the last few calls. I don't know what her situation is. I know she had changed jobs and stuff, so
Yeah,
I'm not sure where she is. And Jeff is with his
yeah,
company's acquisition, he's been
yeah,
dealing with
yeah.
internal politics in terms of stuff like that. So I'm
He
not sure
told
where
me
he is
that.
either.
Yeah, he and I exchanged a couple of emails. You know what? I'll reach out to Helia and ask her how things are going. Um, and if she feels, I actually thought with being at Meta, things would be better for her given Meta OCP same to same. But
Yeah.
I don't know what her job entails, so let me figure that out. Might be good to get you a little bit more support then.
Yeah. I like I said with travel and everything, I haven't had a lot of time to do any writing.
Yeah,
Jeff and I did a lot of we've had a lot of discussions on these calls and Q4, so we have some items to that we've locked down. He's made some really good suggestions.
yeah.
But integrating to those into a spec is actually taking a while. So there's no real big rush, I don't think, right now, but we do want to eventually get to the point where we have a line of sight to 2.0.
Okay. No, fair enough. Sounds good. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, no problem. I guess so. I guess I'll do a before we close the call. I'll do a quick rundown of where we are on some of the items. So the big things that we talked about, we've been talking about in the last couple of weeks was Jeff's 2.0 proposal that we've kind of gone back and forth on trying to isolate which actual things would go into a 2.0 spec. Oh, sorry, I was trying to share 1 second. Okay, yeah. So here, these were the proposed updates that he had. Um, so we've had a large discussion about header type and stuff like that, and that's the biggest one I think that is still open. Um, he is really pushing hard for 4 bits. I think we need another bit or two. So I think we probably need some outside perspective on what people are doing with the protocol before we settle that argument. The large LLP, which isn't on this list actually, I don't have a huge fight in that race, and I think with some of the other changes, it's not that big of a deal. So I think we're probably pretty close to increasing the size of the LLP going forward for 2.0. Probably 24 bits, I think, is what we've agreed on. LLP header stuff, I think we are mostly in agreement there. I think the only thing we need to finalize is adding an LLP start bit and what that size is. Probably 1 bit. I think his slide originally had 2 bits, but there's really not a reason to, I think, with the large LLP. I think this is before we decided to um, before he picked an LLP size. So I think the new start size would probably just be 1 bit, and the new LLP size would be 24 granules. Um, the header, the LLP header is open pending on the start size. The credit fields also open, but it is tied to the type size. So once we define the types, then we can settle the credit size, and I don't think that's contentious. And lastly, this idle remove, which I think is fine either way. So I think that's mostly closed if we want to do that. So I think the only thing that is contentious here before we start doing finer details and spec work and stuff like that would be closing the TLP header. I think we're mostly in agreement on most of the other things, or once we settle that, then the rest of it kind of falls into place. Now, a lot of that is going to a lot of the work here is specmanship, because it's not just the incorporating these handful of changes in. The other stuff is incorporating in Ventana's proposal for UCIe that they've already published, and what that does to the overall document. So unfortunately, this is a lot of tech writing from moving things around, and I'll have to see if going back to Google Docs, what the best options are for all of that. So probably a lot more wordsmithing here than actual technical discussion, but still there's a number of things here where I think we're fighting over individual bits, and whether I guess we need some sort of additional perspectives to break those stalemates on whether it makes sense to spend bits at specific points. So that's where we are in 2.0, by the way.
Sounds good, Matt and Brian. And you think you were looking to publish this year in somewhere in 2026?
I think our biggest barrier is just technical writing bandwidth.
Sure, yeah.
So possibly 2026, yeah.
Okay. It seems like a good goal. At least you need to have a goal in mind, whether you achieve it eventually because of resource constraints and people's volunteer hours. I
Yeah.
understand, but let's at least put a goal down and see where we get.
Yeah, I'd like to get to. I'd like to see it published for the end of the year. I'd like to have a fully functional draft before the second half, if possible.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that would
then
be
try
great.
and
That way, the global summit, we can also talk about it. So
yeah.
it seems like a good annual cadence.
So one other thing was 1.2. I don't think I think we have a version of it, but we're not closed from the OCP perspective. Again, I'm not entirely sure what else needs to be done done there.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to go back and follow. Yeah, geez, it's
I-
so hard to keep up with all of this. You guys, so I think,
We
uh-huh.
presented to the server group.
Yeah, so we didn't get to the steering committee. Was that what it was?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so I need to get you in the steering committee, and that's a monthly call also. So
Okay.
let me, oh shit, sorry. Let me email Alicia and see if we can get you guys on that call. I know the
Do you know when the
FCS
call is?
uh, because you travel. Let me
Yeah,
look up
I mean,
my calendar on my other email, on my OCP email, and or I'll just ask Alicia. It's so much easier to just ask her, and
okay.
I'll copy you, Brian, to make sure that either you or Jeff or Helia, someone's in town
Okay.
to
Sounds
make that presentation.
sounds
Um,
good.
it's probably not going to be February. It might be in March because I think the FCSA has bagged the February one. Yeah, they have the power of resources and a lot of energy, which uh,
That
good for them.
that's fine. I think everybody that wants this spec is probably has some sort of access to it.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. Yeah,
that's fine. So yeah, so if we can start penciling that in, that would be great.
yeah. Let me send a note out to Alicia right now. Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you for reminding me.
No problem. Anybody else have any other topics to discuss before we close the call this week? Okay. And as a reminder, again, we're on a fortnightly cadence. There's no meeting next week. The week after, I will email out as to whether I'll be able to whether the time slot conflicts with anything I have going on in China.
Sounds good. Thanks, Brian.
All right. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Talk
everybody.
to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.